Good evening, everyone.
Kavod Haraf, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Yeah, so we're doing Hey and Vav regarding the issue of the olive oil and the fragrance that comes from it. So let me just see Shulchan Aruch where we did.
Kavod Haraf, we did the Shulchan Aruch, but you said that we were going to continue on the Bet Yosef.
Right. So
And this was, hey, yeah.
okay, so yeah, I'll just read it over. I'll review this a little bit, the Shulchan Aruch that we did. So it says over here in the Shulchan Aruch in Hey, Shemen Zait Shekatshu o Tachanu. So we have olive oil, and there's two ways to produce it. One is to press it, and the other one to press the olives, and the other one is to grind the olives. So either way, apparently, right, there's a phenomenon like this that when you do that, when you do the process, it starts to have this like smell, coming out, emanating from it. So that smell, it's going to be bore atzebesami. And the reason is because it comes from the trees, even though the oil itself is a liquid. So I'll go back here now to the bit Yosef, as you said, and we'll continue. Try to understand this whole concept here. There's a lot of details in this. So just to review a little bit, right? What we did yesterday, we said Amar Ada. He brings a Gemara here in the bit Yosef. Amar Avada Barahava. Hai kasharta mevarchin alei bore etzav aseh. Right. So he says kasharta. We bless on that atziv samim. Aval mishcha kivisha lo. But when it comes to oil, right, which was pressed from the olives, not so. That's the first opinion. And then Rav Kahana says, Afilu mashcha kevisha aval mashcha techina. So he says, even if it's pressed, same thing. But he says, when it's ground olives, no, not so. We don't bless that blessing. So we see here there's like three opinions in the Gemara. So then there's a fourth opinion, right? In the name of the Neharda'eh. So what is this Neharda'eh? These are people who live in this town, right? Nehardea. Where was this town? In Bavel. So over there, they said, those rabbis, that even if it's ground, same thing. So the Rif and the Rosh Paskin like that opinion, and that's why the Torah said, right, that regardless of how you made the oil, whether it's pressing or grinding, it's all going to be ha'etz. So what does that mean? Borei atzev samim. Okay, so then he moves on. It says, "Mash katav Rabbeinu Pirash Be'aruch kasharta ikaro shemen zait." So he says, right, that now the only thing that we're missing here is to know what is the word kasharta mean. That was the first variety that we had here, the first type. So let's read the tour inside and see exactly what he says about this. He brings from the Aruch, so the Aruch is like it's an ancient dictionary, that was written by a big rabbi, a Talmudic dictionary, something like that. It was written like 1,000 years ago or more, and it's very authoritative in terms of defining the words of the Talmud and so forth and so on. That's why he brings it here. It's quoted by the big rabbis, the Aruch. His name was Rabbi Natan, if I'm not mistaken, this rabbi that wrote the Aruch. Anyway, so let's see what the Torah says in the name of the Aruch here. Right, so it says like this: Uperish Aruch, Be'aruch keshuta ikaro shemen zait ume'arvin. So it says basically it's olive oil, and then you mix it with bo kama mine atzev samim. They mix it with like fragrant oils. I'm sorry, fragrant woods. שמכשירים אותו מעשה רוקח, מפותם. So it's basically like some kind of a process, that they make this thing together. And it's like, one of those things that people know how to do, produce this kind of a thing. Professionals, whatever. It's a technique, whatever. So that's what it is. So it's not like what we said afterwards, which was basically just, like olive oil. But here it's olive oil mixed with other things, all kinds of fragrant woods, right? So according to the first opinion, only that one was Borei Atzevesamim, but the other ones were not. But as we said, right, we passed like the last opinion, which said that they all are. Okay, so that's great. Now let's go back to Bet Yosef. Continue. And then he says, right, in the name of in the Ravad, Gam Mash Katab B'Shem Ravad. He wrote the tour, name of the Ravad, Dafka Keshe Etzim Betocho. That's only when those woods are inside it. Right? That's what the Ravad says. Ad Demine Besamim Kulel Hakol. So all that, he says, Ken Katab Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu also brought down this whole right essay there. Ve'arosh and also the Rosh. Okay, so great. Let's move on. So it's Mash Katab Rabbeinu Ulechu le'alma bainan she'ikaran kayam. So he says, right, everybody agrees that in order to make this kind of blessing, there has to be the source inside that oil. Ktsat, like somewhat, a little bit at least. Hilkach im sinano. So therefore, he says, if he filtered it, ve'en bo klum, and there's nothing in there, basically. Me'abesamim, from those fragrances, yesh omrim she'en mivarchin al recho ela borei shemen arev. So then the blessing changes, he says, right? And we bless this blessing, which is talking about fragrant oils. So it's not that we don't bless on it at all. It's just that the blessing becomes different. Because now it's basically like a fragrant oil and doesn't have any solid matter inside because it was all filtered out. Okay, so some say, another opinion, is we don't bless on it at all, this kind of thing. Because why? The source is not there. Okay, so that's the opinions that are brought down in the tour. Now we're gonna see, right, which one we paskin like out of these opinions. Okay, so now it says in Bet Yosef, Svara zo achrona hi Svarat Rambam. So he says the final opinion there is the Rambam. So what does that mean? That apparently we don't bless anything. Let's see. So he says that the Rambam says like this, right? If you're a blessing on all kinds of clothing, right, which are scented. So I'll explain to you guys what this means, right? In the old days, they had this technique where they would take clothing, and in order to give it a good scent, they would like burn incense, and absorb and let the clothing absorb the smoke of the incense, something like that. And this way, it would have a nice scent to it. So that clothing smells very good. But the thing is, it's only, just the right the vapor that came out, the smoke. So the essence of the herbs is not there. So therefore, the Rambam says in a case like that, since the essence is not there, you don't bless nothing on that. So it's just smell without any source, without Then so then he says that the Rach seems to argue with this. Rabbeinu Yonah, because these rabbis wrote Bishmo in his name, the Mashcha Kevisha Aino Shekovshim Shum Shamin Vered So this is where we left off, right, last time, yesterday. But I kind of like I wanted to review this because we did it a little bit quickly yesterday, a little bit too fast. So anyway, it says there that when you have this kind of oil, which is pressed, pressed olives from pressed olives. So he says, how do they make this? They take sesame. So what does that mean? Sesame seeds, right? Apparently. And they take also rose petals, things like whatever. Uvered, ועצי בשמים, and also fragrant woods, ומינים הרבה, and all kinds of things like this, וקולט השומשומים הריח של הבשמים. So what happens, right? That the sesame absorbs the scent of all these herbs. וסוחטין וטוחנין אותן. So what do they do then? They press it, and grind it. ויש בו ריח של בשמים. So now you got like this, nice smell of all these herbs. ומשך התחינה קרוב לתחינתן. And you have this, right, oil, which is ground up, from ground olives, right close to the time of the grinding. So in other words, that's when the smell emanates, as we said, right? That's the whole thing. נתן עליהם עצי בושם. So he put on them these fragrant woods. Mao, what's the rule? Mao de Tema, you may have thought to say, I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. You may have thought to say, Kivan Tikarov de Chitkinatan, since it's close to the, you may have thought to say that since it's close to the grinding, Natan ben lo kaltu. Right. Since he put it there at that time, they didn't really absorb the smell. Kamash comes to teach you that it's not so. Umashma she'afal pi. So it implies that even though she'en kan ikara habosem kelal, so implies, right, that even though you don't really have the main herb here at all, the source, in other words, it's just the smell that they absorbed, the sesame seeds. Nevertheless, right, blessing is borei atzeh b'samim. So you see from there that the Rach argues with the Rambam. Because according to Rambam, we would not bless on this at all. Also, Rashba seems to say like that. He wanted to bring proof that he wanted to bring proof that regarding the rose water, he's going to bless atzeh b'samim. Since it's written, midikatav Rabbeinu Hai, since Rabbeinu Hai writes, Mashcha kevisha kegon shumshumin shekopshim otam, that regarding this, right, again, the sesame seeds, right, that they press them, ima bered with the roses, ve'ima bini psag, some kind of a herb, whatever, the fragrant woods, as we said, ve'en zulatam me'atzeh b'samim, ve'im zulatam me'atzeh b'samim, and also other types of fragrant woods, ad shetityashen v'kolet hareach, until it absorbs the smell because of the smoke. The alma afilu shemena kolet reach vered. So he says that you see from here that even if it absorbs the scent of the roses, מברך עליו בורא עצי ושמים. It's still going to be עצי ושמים. כל שכן מי הוורד בעצמן. All the more so, rose water by itself. עד כאן השם. That's the end of the Rashba there. Okay, interesting. So then he says, משמע בהדיא דלפירוש זה, so it implies that according to this perush, אף על פי שאין מהבושם בשמן כלל, even though there's not any real essence of the herbs in this oil, ועיקר מברך עליו בורא עצי ושמים, still עצי ושמים, מפני כריתת הריח, because you absorb the scent. רבנו גם כן חלק על דברי הרמב"ם, so he says the Tur argues with the Rambam here, בסימן שאחר זה, after in the next chapter. Okay, great. So we got a little bit more here. Now that we're doing it nice and slowly, we're understanding much better. At least I don't know, I'm understanding much better this time. First time was too fast. Okay, so let's move on. והרמב"ם כתב שמן זית שכבשו וטחנו אותו. So the Rambam says, right, to what he said regarding these oils. Let's and Bet Yosef says Beperek Tet, he brings a source for the Rambam. 9th perek, right? נראה שהוא מפרש משחה כבישה ומשחה תחינה שהשמן זית לבדו בלא שום בושם, right? So it seems like he says, Bet Yosef, that the Rambam is understanding that these types of olive oils, he says, they're not really mixed with any other fragrances, just by itself. שהשמן זית לבדו בלא שום בושם כובשים או טוחנים אותו עד שריחו נודף. So then what gives it the smell if it has no fragrances? As we said, right, that because of the grinding process, so the pressing process, when you do that, like, right there on the spot, it gives off some kind of a smell. I don't know, never did this in my life, so I wouldn't know, but I'll take their word for it. Okay. וכשראתה מפרש שמפטמים שמן בבשמים. So what about this word, right? Kesharta. So we said, right, that the Aruch said that this was a mixture of olive oil with other, herbs and stuff. So what about the Rambam? How does he explain it? So he says, he also seems to say the same thing. That basically, it's a mixture of, olive oil and other herbs. שמפטמים שמן בבשמים כמו שמן משחה, מפני שמעורבים בו כמה מיני בשמים. So he says, because we have several types of herbs that are mixed in there, me'etz u'me'esev, whether it's from wood or, grass, right, whatever, herbs, on the ground, u'mimina acherim, and also other types of things, לפיכך מברך עליו בורא מיני בשמים. So therefore the blessing is מיני בשמים. So why is it going to be mineh v'samim? Because there's a mixture of different types of things. So we just do the general blessing that covers everything. Because it's a mixture. So it's hard to really track down what exactly which blessing you would need, specifically speaking. Therefore, you make the general blessing and that's it. Makes sense, of course. ונראה שהוא גורס כשרתה מברכים עליו בורא בשמים. So it seems like according to this, right, that his text in the Gemara said that we say mineh besamim, right? But the truth is, right, that we saw another text that said not like that. It said atzeh besamim. וזהו שכתב רבנו, and that's what the two wrote, ואדוני אבי ז"ל, that my father katav stam al kulam bore atzev samim. That my father said that it's atzev samim, all these things. כלומר, שכתב כשרתה ומשכה כבישה ומשכה תחינה, כולו מברכים אליי ובורא עצב וסמים. So according to Rosh, right, they're all עצב וסמים, all these things. וכן כתב הריף, right, the Rif also seems to say like that. והטעם לפי שהם גרוסין כן בגמרא. So he says the reason is because according to that text in the Gemara, that's what it says. It says עצב וסמים. But according to Rambam, apparently, right, it says there, mineh v'samim. So we do have here a discrepancy between them, right? And it seems like the Rambam here is in the minority. So let's see what we got in the Shulchan Aruch. So this was Hey and Vav. Okay. Hey, we already did. So I guess we'll do Vav. So just to recap, right, what we said in Hey, which was that when you just have plain olive oil, which has that scent, right, that comes out when you produce it. That's going to be Boreh Atzev Samim. And then in Vav, what does it say? Shemen besamo kemo shemen amishcha, right? So what about fragrant oils, with all kinds of herbs mixed inside there? Or be'atzeh besamim, right? Whether it's, herbs, grass, or, woods, God knows whatever. Mevarech boreh atzeh besamim. So what's going to be the blessing? Atzeh besamim. Which is like the Rif and the Rosh, right? As we said, not like the Rambam. Veim bisveh besamim. So it says if it's like types of grass, not from a tree, so then the blessing is going to be mevarech boreh isveh besamim, right? For grass. Veim hayu bo etzim be'asavim. What about if you got both? From the tree and also from the ground. Mevarech boreh mineh v'samim. So then you can do mineh v'samim. Because, we got a mixture, right? So we're not really sure which one was the dominant thing there. How can you really tell, right? It's very hard to gauge that. Ve'im sineno ve'otzi mimenu v'samim. But if he filtered it, and he took out all the solid matter, right? All those, herbs, right? Nothing there. Yesh omrim shemarech boreb shemen areb. So some say, right, you bless shemen areb, which is like fragrant oils. Ve'yesh omrim sheno mevarech sheno mevarech alav klal. Some say you don't bless at all. That was the Rambam, right? To have a reach shen lo ikar. Why? Because there's no source there. Since it's a doubt, he says, right? So he says, therefore, better not to smell it. Why? Because once you smell it, you're getting into a doubt. Good point. So now that brings us back to something we said before, right? A couple of days ago, which was regarding the perfume, right? What do we bless on perfume? So I told you guys, right? There's a machloket between my rabbi and some other rabbis. Some say you shouldn't bless on perfume because there's no source there. And the rabbi said there is a source there. You have to bless on it. So how does it come out according to this, right? What happens over there? So my answer is like this, right? That what the rabbi is talking about, my rabbi, doesn't resemble this case, because here we're talking about where there's no source at all. It's just basically in the air, just vapor. whatever you want to call it, right? Scent in the air. But the truth is, with the perfume, it's not just scent over there, because the actual matter is in the perfume. So the actual stuff is in there. Like it's just in liquid form, as opposed to the oil. When you filter it out, you have no source there. So basically, right, you're just smelling the oil and what the residue from the herbs. So that's why, I guess, right, the rabbi felt that this doesn't apply to the perfume, this rule here. Because according to this, right, if this was the same as a perfume, you shouldn't smell it at all, the perfume, because you're going to get into a doubt, what the blessing is there. Okay, interesting. It's all discussion in itself. So we got time. I guess we'll move on. So now we're going to Zion. Right. Okay. So here says the tour, Simlak, right? The Hilfi Yama, Hilfi Yama, Bore Atzev Samim. So these two herbs, whatever they are Atzev Samim. So we have to know what they are. So let's see if we can find out. No, looks like we're gonna get there. So it says in the Bet Yosef like this. Perek Kitzad Mevarchin, right? This is in the Talmud. Peresh Rashi, Kemosh Katav Rabenu v'Rabenu Yona. Rashi explains like Rabenu Yona, Katav Ha'et Shelo Hu Rach Beyoter. So he says this particular item, it's like a very soft wood. Venikra rosemary, right? So it's rosemary. Oh, there you go, right? That's what we're talking about. Not really familiar with this thing. I don't think I've ever smelled it. I don't know. Anyway, but it's known. It's known what it is. So he says the blessing is borei atzev samim, even though it's very soft. So meaning what? It doesn't really have a texture of wood, It's a little bit like more like a spineless jellyfish. But nevertheless, right? It's considered to be, from the tree. So borei atzev samim is the blessing on there. Okay, very interesting. Let's see. Oh, there's a little bit more here. So it says, מה שכתב רבנו בשם רש"י, that what she wrote, right? חילפי ימה הוא שיבולת נרד. Oh. Now he gives you the other one, right? What it is. In other words, we just now defined the first item, which was a simlak. Now he's talking about the chilfi yam. So there he says it's shiboret nerd. So shiboret nerd is a very famous thing. Why? Because it's one of the spices of the incense, the famous incense, right? Ketoret. So It says Rashi bier devarav od because Rashi explains more. Katav shehu bosem shekorin ishpig. Oh, you guys know what this is? Ishpig. Rabbeinu Yocham katav the simelak hu hanikra yasmin. Right. So he says it's jasmine. Simelak. Uh-huh. So we have a couple of opinions here. Jasmine, whatever they call it. So it says, right, Yasmin is right, Balashon Ishmael, right? That's the Arabic word for it. Right. So according to the first opinion, right, this Similac was rosemary, but according to this, it's jasmine. So fine. And then it says, Katav Rashba says, B'Shem HaGeonim, the name of the Geonim, the Simulak, Bechil Fiyama, V'Nirgis, Afal Gav De'itpehu. So he says, right, all these types, and also Nirgis, even though they have De'itpehu, Mai Derakich, לא אכפת להם, אלא כיוון דמוציא עליו מעצור, מברכים בורא עצי בשמים. So it says, even though they have, they're very soft, as we said, right? Nevertheless, we still call it, type of wood. Therefore, the blessing is Boreat Sevesamim. Okay, great. Fantastic. What else can we say? So let's go into Shulchan Aruch and see what we can glean out from this. So says Shulchan Aruch, Simlak vechilfi diyama, right? These two types of herbs, as we said, mevarech borei atzevesemim, right? Blessing is atzevesemim because they come from trees. Simulak yesh mefarshim rosemary. Right? Some say simulak is rosemary. Ve'yesh mefarshim yasmin. Some say it's jasmine. ויש מפרשים שהוא עשב שיש לו 3 שורות של עליו זו למעלה מזו ולכל שורה 3 עליו. וחילפי דיאמה הוא שיבולת נרד ושקוראים אישפיק. So some have different approaches, right? What these things are. But whichever way you interpret it, right? The point is that these are like herbs that grow on the tree, and that's why either it's wood or some other growth on the tree there, and that's why we bless Bore Atsevesamim. So as opposed to what? As opposed to what we learned before, which is that if you have like the fruit of the tree, which is something edible, like a fruit or a nut. So there we said, "Anoten reach tov laperot." It's a different blessing. We make like a fruit blessing there. But these things are not fruits, they're not edible. So therefore, we say Atzeves Samim. This is the difference between those in this group and that group. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we can. I think we can do one more. Yeah, there's a few of them here in this chapter. Big chapter. Okay, we'll go step by step, one step at a time. So now we'll do Chet. So says the tour. Sigli bore isbebesamim. What about sigli, right? Uh, it's isbebesamim, right? Which is means it's a grass. It grows on the ground, right? Not on the tree. So says Beit Yosef Gamze Sham. It's also there. So he doesn't explain here what it is, but in the Shulchan Aruch, I think he does. So let's take a look there. So it says, right, Sigli vehen violesh, right? It's like violets, violets. Bore isbebesamim, right? It's isbebesamim. Why is that? Because they don't grow on the tree, they grow on the ground. Okay, that's pretty clear, right? Oh, okay. Well, the Mishnah Berurah here adds a nice tidbit for us here. What is a tidbit? So he says that this flower is the one that's mentioned in the Chumash. Where is that? With the whole story with the, Leah and Rachel, the Reuven. You guys know that story? Okay. I hope I don't have to tell it to you.
Yes, Kabbalah, the Dubadim or something like
Dudaim,
that.
Dudaim, right? Dudaim, right? That's
Dubadim.
yeah.
Thank you.
So apparently, right, according to Mishnah Berurah, this Dudaim was violets. Aha. There you go. That was the whole exchange between Leah and Rachel there. Okay, good to know. Okay, fantastic. So we have more time. Let's move on. We can do at least one more. So okay, let's go to Bet Yosef. To Bet Yosef. Let's see what we got there. Uh-huh. So now it says the tour gives you another type of herb here, which is called nargis. Hagadel begina says they grow in the gardens. Bore atsebesamim, it's atsebesamim. The gadel basadeh, but if it grows in the field, bore itzvesamim. So again, right, this type of this particular herb grows on the tree and also grows on the ground, just like what we said regarding roses. There's two types. Gam zeh sham. It's also there. He says. Rashi explains. Kemosh in other words, it's also there in the Gemara that Kemosh katav Rabbeinu. It explains like the Torah. V'chein katav Rabbeinu Yonah b'shem Aruch. They all say like Rabbeinu. So you know what? If we're all talking about that, let's go look in the Torah because we need some more information regarding what he wrote about this Nargis, what this thing is. Right. So here, the text is more like narkom, right? Agadel begina. This is the text over here. There's one that grows in the ground. There's one that grows in the tree. Right? Borei atzev samim. Agadel basadeh borei isbeh. So it depends, right, where it grows. If it grows in the ground, it's going to be isbeh samim. Peresh Rashi chavatzeret tasharon. Ve'yireh sheim. So he explains it like from a biblical word, chavatzeret tasharon, like which is written in the Shira Shirim. This term. ויראה שאם היו לפניו עצי בשמים, ויספה בשמים, ומיני בשמים, ברך מיני בשמים, פתר את הכל. Okay. Well, so that's what the tour says. חבצלת השרון. Okay, let's see. Let's try to see what that is. I still don't know what it is. Some kind of flower. So, yeah, so let's see the Beit Yosef here, what he writes. כתב עוד רבנו יונה, it says רבנו יונה writes also, ויש אומרים אותו שקוראים ליריב, some say it's ליריב, בלעז, ויש בכל אחד שישה עלים לבנים. So he says each one has 6 white petals. וכבר כתבתי גם בסימלק וחילפי ימה מאיזה, he says I already wrote about סימלק עם חילפי ימה, מאיזה טעם מברכים עליו בורא עצב וסמים. Why you bless on that עצב וסמים? והרשב"א בתשובה כתב, the Rashba says regarding this thing, the Tama de Mefalginan ben Ginunita Dabra. Why do we differentiate between the one that grows in the garden and the one that grows in the ground? The bracha mishum de Ginunita de Abad ben Mashkin Oto Gadel Umitkayem. So it says because the one that grows in the garden, we water it, we irrigate this thing. The Gadel Umitkayem, and then it grows and stays. Right, it lasts. Even though the wood, right, dries out. About the dabra, but when it comes to the one that grows in the field, mityavesh kesev, it dries out like a grass, ve'olechlo, and like that. Okay, I still don't know what it is. Okay, let's see Shulchan Aruch, right? What you can find there. So says Shulchan Aruch, Nargis vehu chabatzeret, right? So he says Nargis is chabatzeret. Well, great, I don't know either one. Right? Ve'yesh omrim shehu lirio. Some say it's lirio. Im gadel begina. If it grows, as we said, right, in the garden, it's going to be atzev samim. Ve'im hu gadel b'seder. But if it grows in the field, it's going to be ispeh because it grows in the ground. Okay, I still don't know what it is. Let's see Mishnah Berurah. Maybe you can help us a little bit here. Maybe. Hmm. I don't really see it. Let me take a quick look at the Google. Maybe Google can help us. You never know. Oh, I thought it was this. So Google says it's the lily. Right, the lily of the valley, right? That grows in the valley, grows in the ground. I guess that's correct. Mhm. All right, that's interesting. Okay, so we'll take that for now. If we need to update it, we'll update it, Bezat Hashem, next time. Okay, so great. So, in other words, again, right, to recap this whole thing, that when you're talking about this lily thing, right, depends on where it grows, right? If it grows on a tree, so it's going to be atzeh. If it grows on the ground, it's going to be isbeh. Okay, makes sense, right? That's the way it goes. Okay, thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Chazak u'baruch, Laila Tov. We'll see you tomorrow, Bezat Hashem. God bless.
Thank you so much.
Laila Tov. All the best.
Yeah.